Okay, welcome to another special edition of the Music Ally TV show. And today we're looking into the musicians collaborating with artificial intelligence, what it means for music, how it works from a technical and musician standpoint, and how artists and songwriters collaborate with it and get paid at the end of it all. Now, music and AI is something we've discussed a lot on Music Ally, and we're thrilled to welcome two people at the cutting edge of their respective areas of work. First of all, Oleg Stavitsky, CEO of Endel, the Berlin-based platform that creates adaptive, real-time, personalized sounds and music using AI and other technologies for use at home, at work, or anywhere, really. Hi, Oleg. Nice to have you.
Hi, thank you very much for having me.
A pleasure. And secondly, Richie Hawtin, pioneering techno musician and DJ who's released multiple recordings under his F.U.S.E and Plastic Man guises to huge critical acclaim, amongst others. He's also a groundbreaking DJ and performer, and is a technologist, co-founding Beatport and Play Differently, and a businessman with the music technology fund Plus 8 Equities, who I believe are also investors in Endel. Is that right? Richie, hi.
Yeah, well, yeah, you want to, be connected to the friends that you feel are like-minded and work together, roll your sleeves up and do super cool things. And that's, so there's multiple reasons why Oleg and Endel and I found each other and took our already kind of beginning of a collaboration deep into the AI territory.
Yeah, and a perfect connection really in many ways. It seems you've both been pursuing the future for a long time in your respective areas, so it seems to be working pretty well together so far. Well, we're going to talk to Richie and Oleg about their new project together and to get their thoughts on how musicians and AI can work together and what it means for the music industry. Now, Richie and Oleg, first of all, can you, between you, perhaps we'll start with you, Richie, and then Oleg, you can explain the technological side. Can you explain what you've done together, what the new project is, and why working in this way with AI appeals to you, Richie?
Well, yeah, and your introduction to Oleg, you said that Endel technology is adaptive and personalized, and there was another way of describing it. And actually, I think you could describe me in the same way as a performer, because as a DJ, I am adaptive somehow to working with the audience. I have a kind of a set amount of media assets, songs in my computer, which I've chosen. And I work with that repertoire each night to give a very unique experience. And, in this situation with Endel, I've taken newly recorded Plastic Man material, stems and frequencies, samples, and we fed that into the AI algorithm, and then that algorithm is the one who's actually kind of adapting, but and making the final performance. But it really feels like a very familiar workflow for me. So I think that's what people are like, well, how did you do this? But actually, I kind of did what I would normally do, except at the very final point, I kind of step away and then I pass it over to Oleg.
Yeah. Well, perfect transition there. So as you would expect from a DJ,
yeah,
of course.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about transitions.
Oleg, so how did this? I mean, obviously you knew Richie already, but why was this a good fit? And what do you think? What appealed to you about having Richie involved in the project?
I mean, me and Richie, we've been talking about this for a while. It's been a while since this collaboration happened. And to me, when I'm asked, what exactly is going on here? Like, what is this project? To me, the answer is this is a new way of experiencing music. And the way we're doing this is exactly what Rich has said. We're basically extracting his DNA in a form of a stem pack and feeding that into the algorithm. So, and Endel, it's a tech company, right? But there's artists, musicians, and scientists involved in creation of this technology and this company. So for us, culture and cultural relevancy and the cultural aspect of these things, they're all very, very, very important. So with Reach, and as well as the previous collaboration that we've done, I always tell to all of the artists, like, it doesn't have to happen. Like, we don't have to do this, but we have to click first. And there was this immediate cultural match. There was an immediate, almost like a frequency match here, where we were like, okay, this makes sense. Like this feels good. It clicks together, like what Rich is doing as a musician and as a technologist, and what our technology is doing. It clicks well, and there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I think that not only on yeah, like on many levels, there's a similar, let's say, a harmonic frequency, because there's a visual component to the Endel app and experience, which resonated with me. And I think, you know, within the past collaborations with Grimes, and also with the, let's say, the kind of built-in sonic soundscapes that Endel was doing in their original versions, there was already this sense of space and architecture in what they were doing. And I think, you know, those were words and ideas that resonated with all of us. And honestly, it's like, I was a fan of Endel as a techie, and I think I can say Endel and the team were fans of Plastic Man, and that's really naturally brought us together.
And so, Richie, to stay with you for a second. So you've started to talk about this, but in sort of simple-ish technical ways, how do you collaborate with a piece of technology like this? I mean, we're saying it's an AI in kind of shorthand, but it's a suite of technologies, I guess.
Yeah, well, I had to go into this knowing that I had a certain amount of say in the equation, and that was I was able to feed in any type of sound component that I wanted to, and after that, I wasn't going to be able to control it. So I approached that in many different layers, saying, okay, here's a really beautiful, let's say, hi-hat or small blip. I was like, that can work in many different ways. So I'll give that very small component straight to the Endel algorithm. And here's something which needs, you know, I really want to keep this kind of modulation going. I really need this filter sweep to always happen like this. So let's give a bit of a longer stem to the algorithm. So it was really building blocks, but all of them like honestly like a Lego set, because you've got all these different colors, you've got small ones, big ones, and it's by the combination of those that, you know, as a kid you could always build something new, you know, and that's really was what I wanted to deliver. And I think the team was like, holy cow, Rich, you've just given us way more than we actually imagined you were going to do. So I was just working like I would be working on an album, and trying to create as many environments and frequencies and bits and pieces that I would normally finish, you know, into tracks, into an album. And I delivered that into the AI, knowing that the sonic building blocks had enough of my DNA in that then I would be freely and open to taking a step back of the control and allowing Oleg, his team, and their technology to finish off the pieces.
I will ask you in a minute about how complicated the letting go part is. But Oleg, you know, Richie obviously has provided all these materials that are the building blocks of his songs. How do you then, use the technology you have to, I'm not going to say create a virtual Richie, but like, how do you take those pieces and make it feel right? How do you make it feel like his music and work?
I mean, we're making it feel like Richie's music by literally, you know, introducing his stems, his sounds. So there's no other sounds in the soundscape in Deeper Focus except for Richie's sound, right? So that is how, but we've had this idea from, you know, the very beginning, you know, when we started Endel, and the way Endel works, right, is we have an in-house sound engineer and a composer whose name is Dmitry Yevgrafov. He's one of the co-founders, and he's a neoclassical composer, right? And in the beginning, it was him who created like a library of stems, and all of the soundscapes inside the app would be created using that library of stems. And then we were always like, okay, but what would happen if we invite another artist, and he or she would, you know, create a sound pack and feed that into the algorithm, and that would power a standalone, separate, what we call limited edition soundscape within Endel. And that's, you know, that's exactly what happened. So it was, I mean, if you think about this, like this compositional approach goes back to, you know, the 70s and the 80s when Brian Eno was working on his ideas of, generative music, and then the minimalist composers of the 70s, like Steve Reich and Philip Glass. This is where we come from, those ideas and that approach to making music by creating a system, creating a framework, and feeding the building blocks into the framework, and then stepping back, kind of, taking a hands-off approach and watching the system creating something out of those building blocks.
Yeah. Richie, how do you feel as an artist? This stepping back process, it's you're as an artist yourself, you're an exacting, person. You work hard to get everything just right. And so here you're actually letting go completely of the music, if you like. Something else is making your music. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think making music is there's many levels of making music. It's making the sounds, it's creating interplay of sounds and effects, and then arrangement, and then song arrangement, and then album arrangement, and so I was able to still keep a lot of control in the way that it was up to me what I delivered. What I did deliver wasn't everything I had done. There was many different sounds that I was creating that didn't seem to be cohesive to the whole structure that I took out. And I kind of, let's say, lack of a better word, I hedged my bets in a way that I gave things that I was confident would mix and match, and song 1 would go over song 2, and 7 and 8 would also work together in order to give the best possible building blocks to the AI, so that, even if it wasn't going to be a structure that I would have built, it would still make sense within my sonic kind of language or vocabulary. So and the system is only as good as what you feed it, right? So I was very careful in that approach, and I'm not a musician. I'm much more. Am I a technologist? I'm a creator. Like, I've always used electronic instruments to be creative. So the Roland engineers who made the 909 drum machine made some very specific decisions in their design that enable me to create music. They made the 909 kick drum. I didn't make that, but that is part of my sound. So I see this collaboration as another extension of that, of me collaborating with technology. And maybe I've handed it off in a different way. Maybe I've lost some control in certain places, but the interaction and interplay of man and machine, there's always a part where I choose or have accepted that the machine does something for me. And this is just a new exploration of that.
Yeah. I mean, the results are really effective. I've played it to a lot of people here in Berlin.
I think the results are absolutely, okay, I think it's absolutely, it's beautiful. Like, I was listening on and off, during the 24-hour live stream that we had. And, I said it once, I typed it, was like, I was listening to myself. Like, it was really incredible and scary and exhilarating. And there was like some moments I said, oh, this is a great moment. And then I was like, actually, I wouldn't have done this, but it's interesting.
Yeah. Did you write it or not? It's hard to say, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. It blurs the line, but I'm a kid, grew up in the 70s with, in a household with dad and music and technology and hi-fi. And I've always been in that intersection. And this is like, when Oleg and I sat on a park bench just talking about this idea, and he was the techie who's a music freak, and I was the musician who was a techie freak, and it just completely made sense. And that's why I think the sonic outcome of what you're hearing completely is cohesive and feels fresh, exciting, and new, and it's part Plastic Man and part Endel.
Yeah, which is fascinating, isn't it? Now, on that idea of, you put something in and then Endel shapes it, and then something that sounds like Richie but is perhaps not Richie but is Richie comes out. This collaboration is obviously it is very effective, and it does sound really good. And it works. But when we talk about, one of the things that we're talking about a lot in the music industry at the moment is assertion of ownership of what is yours and what is not yours. And because that is the sort of structure on which the recorded music industry works, at least, and across the other areas as well. So who owns the music that is made within Endel? I don't know who wants to go with this first. Maybe Oleg. Maybe this is one for you.
Oleg, go for it.
I mean, I don't know if we want to go into the details of, the agreement that we have, right? But what I can say, I'd rather not go into the specifics of how the contract is structured, because what I can say is this is an uncharted territory for everyone. And what's interesting is that we literally had to invent the legal framework for this collaboration, because it was, it never happened before. And even what's especially interesting is just one example is when we've been working with Grimes and we've been working with her lawyers, and they were constantly trying to put it in a box. And what they were saying stuff like, well, Claire approved the soundscape and it can only appear in the app the way she approved it. Right. And we were like, yeah, but like, what exactly did she approve? She just approved a version of it that she heard, and it's going to sound a little bit different every time that someone is playing it. And they were like, they were having a really hard time kind of wrapping their head around that concept. So there's also what I'm willing to share, let's say that there is a potential of exporting that soundscape as a static release, right? So there is a co-ownership concept for that part, if that makes sense.
I think very important that it is uncharted territory. And I went into this project like I was recording or creating a completely new Plastic Man album, and we've put all of that together as kind of a shared experiment. This album actually doesn't exist without my stems and the technology of Endel. Once you take those apart, either I have to finish the album, or Endel has to get new content. So it is a beautiful experiment of shared ownership. And I think what's interesting in looking into the future is that we are going into a place where music and samples can and will be reappropriated by AIs and by other new creative technologies that will give further life and go beyond the idea of a remix. So it does, start to make you think about ownership and how to properly track and sort through all that information. And I think that definitely starts to bring up questions of what else is happening in the world these days with smart contracts and all the things that we will need in the future. Because once you put something into the ether, and it's a digital, music is a digital good, it's much more digital than analog these days. And all these different ways of use are going to come up. You're going to need much more sophisticated technology, like probably also some AI technology to help track it and make sure the ownership is understood and properly approved or accounted for.
I would also like to add to that, there's, for example, something that we haven't figured out really right now is, for example, what happens if someone records 60 minutes of Endel playing, of the deeper focus playing, and then releases that. What are we going to do about that? I don't have a good answer to this currently, because it's an interesting, there's a lot of very interesting paradoxes, both legal, technological, and even philosophical, that we need to challenge, that we need to think about.
It's nice to be able to challenge all those things through music, isn't it? That's a good thing.
Well, I'm, as people who know me, the only way to figure this stuff out is jump right in and push the technology, push the innovation, and then make people, actually yourself or other people within the industry, to say, okay, we do need to figure this out. This isn't a technology that's just around the corner. This technology is here. And as we spoke just briefly before we got on the call, everything is just accelerating. The rate of change, the rate of innovation, and the rate of new opportunity and possibilities in all fields, and especially music and creativity, is absolutely mind-blowing. So we just need to have an open dialogue, and being as a digital creative musician tech, I want to be exactly in the middle of those discussions.
Yeah, it's super exciting. And also one of the things when you're in those challenging spaces where you're pushing the boundaries a bit, that people, one of the things that people experience is the flip side of that excitement is sort of fear as well, isn't it? I mean, I think it's overstated, but there's perhaps a slightly understandable fear expressed by some musicians that see their role to be absorbed or usurped by AI. And while it's not that simple, or perhaps that scary, there's a sort of kernel of truth in there, isn't there? That the roles are shifting a bit. So, Richie, for instance, you don't have to be directly involved again in the music you've created for Endel. You can just, like you said, you let it go and let Endel do that part, and you can enjoy your own music without people passing any judgment. So, I mean, how do you address that in terms of how would you explain it to a musician who perhaps feels threatened?
Well, my joke is that I'm just making friends with the AI very early on, so that they remember me, in a warm way when they take over the world. But, look, technology is around us. It's empowered us in every level of society, and I want to explore that. And I feel the more you explore, the only way to understand where you fit into that equation is by exploring and to say, oh, okay, so maybe the AI is better at doing that, and then I'm going to spend more time, my 10,000 hours to learn my craft on that other thing which AI isn't good at or hasn't caught up with. So I actually, really listening back to the broadcast, it really, and doing this whole process of creating these building blocks, like my music is very minimal. There's not much there, but this has actually given me even more confidence in how I build such minimal music, and how I can give it over to the AI, and how much of me is still there. You just got to, painters went from using a brush to an Anish Kapoor creating, things out of, phantom black, and having people, engineers design things and help him. Like there's so many things that we've let go of, but there's still artists there. This isn't like a new discussion. It's been there since technology was introduced and artists started using it.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Richie. And Oleg, I mean, from your perspective as a technologist, perhaps, how do you sell the positive role of AI when you're talking to musicians in that way?
What I feel is, since 2019, when we did the infamous Warner Music deal, that I believe actually you guys set the ball rolling on all of that crazy media wave that we've been riding for like a month. That was literally the craziest months of my life, seriously. Like my cell phone literally melted in my hand. Yeah, thank you very much. Because obviously what the press was saying, like, oh, the end is nigh, an algorithm just signed a deal with a major music label. But since then, I believe, or rather what I feel is that the conversation has changed, like the narrative has changed from people saying, oh, there we go, AI will replace the musicians, which was never our intention, obviously, because we come from the music world. We owe everything to the music world. And, the people I keep referencing, Brian Eno and Steve Reich and Philip Glass, they were never afraid of that, right? So, but they sort of, we're rooted in their ideas, right? But at the same time, again, deeper focus would not have happened if it wasn't for Rich. It was, so I don't think there's this danger of, completely, erasing the artist from the equation. Like, it's impossible. I think there's always going to be a living, breathing human being behind the machine, either feeding the building blocks to the machine or teaching the machine or doing something. I don't think we're at a point, and in the next, 10 years at least, we're not going to be at a point where, you click a button and you have the next, Rich recording in there. It's just impossible. We're not there yet. There's always going to be, the man behind the machine.
So final quick question then. Do you think that this is, we're looking at a new sort of phase, just as the introduction of the sampler birthed hip hop and various forms of music in the 80s. We're looking at a new tool that's going to redefine the role of musicians. Richie.
Yeah, 100%. As I'm listening, and then you said also samplers. It's always been, a collaboration between man and technology, or human and technology, and I think this is just another deeper collaboration. And it's key. This word collaboration. It's a communication. It's bi-directional too. I was actually, I gave a certain type of content, knowing or at least imagining what the AI was going to do. So, even though I wasn't directly speaking to the Endel AI, there was this thought process going back and forth, and whether it's that thought process or using sync button to help you as a DJ, a time align, or whether it's going to be as we move into a world of extended reality where people are going to be even hearing more real-time things direct from studios, and you're going to have an AI assistant maybe helping you with some chord progressions or this and that. It's not going to take away the humanity. It may actually even, magnify just different areas of the humanity that goes into the creative process.
Yeah, well, it's a good point to leave it, I think, as we look forward into the future. So huge thanks to Oleg and Richie for joining us. Well, we're absolutely fascinated to see where this goes, and we'll keep discussing it. And as I said, I actually played. I socially distanced. Met some friends over the weekend and plugged it into a Bluetooth speaker and played it for a few hours in the street as we had a beer here in Berlin, and it went down really, really well. So there you go, Richie. It's been road tested here as well. So thanks very much. Now we have that's it for Music on ITV. We have a free weekly newsletter, The Knowledge, that you can sign up for. There will be a link below this video or podcast, however you're listening and watching it. There will also be links to Endel and Richie and all the project information as well. And so that's it. Thank you both very much for joining us. And thank you out there for listening.